Hello, everyone. Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict show. What I want to talk to you today is provide you a brief analysis about the phone call President Biden made to China. Of course, many were asking whether China is going to pick up the phone or not. Joking aside, we're going to talk about some really serious issues regarding this call. What does it mean? And this is why I decided to come on the air and share this with you. As I said again, in the question, was the call meant to issue a warning to China, or the call meant to ask for China's help when it comes down to Russia's issue in Ukraine? So you decide on that. All I'm going to do, guys, is provide you some framework analysis that put things in a framework for you, and you can reach whatever conclusion. There are those who are saying it's neither or. It was no warning there, and it was no asking for help. I didn't read it that way, given I had a chance to read both readout, one from China's government and one from the United States government. And this is what I wanted to provide you, this breakdown of what it all means. Well, we all know that the call came on the heels of the United States phone call a few days ago to Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, which both countries didn't even pick up the phone, regardless of what the White House is saying. So, this time with China is different. Of course, international protocol, we suggest that you do pick up the phone and answer to another leaders. You just don't slam the phone completely and not answer at all. It just, diplomatically speaking, it doesn't bode well. But that's not where the issue is. The argument is that from the bat, the Chinese President Xi, rejected President Biden's request, because here is what happened. President Biden asked President Xi to join NATO's led sanctions against Russia to punish it for the military operation in Ukraine. And President Xi said, I'm sorry, why am I going to do that? It's the idea of, first of all, China has its own strategic interests to think about. China also has to think about its own issues in Taiwan, which I will get into that. But that is one of the reasons why, because China didn't want to get pulled into being sucked in with what the West is doing, because there is now a conversation in Europe, and this is according to some of my own sources, that there's a conversation in Europe, especially in Germany and France, that this is not going very well as far as the sanctions, as far as whatever is going on in Europe. Why? For example, in Germany, there is an increase of the energy cost by about 25%. In France, the government is asking people to sort of reduce the consumption of electricity. And this is not a good sign for Europeans, let alone we're talking about the human refugee catastrophe that's taking place in Europe right now. And this is why China went ahead quickly and issued the readout after the phone call, which was about a 2-hour phone call. It was a civil discourse per se, civil conversation. But at the same time, based on what I read, the U.S. didn't come with that attitude of, well, we're going to impose stuff on you if you do this or you do that, because that language doesn't serve anybody. You cannot expect to talk to the other party in that manner and expect them to sit down and have negotiations with you. That's usually a bully approach, if we will, or an arrogance of sort. And that's usually never ends well, because there is something called the dignity. Would you allow somebody to talk down to you? I don't think so. It's just common practice. The interesting thing about the readout that China issued, after that, the White House immediately issued something, but the president withheld the comments and did not answer any questions. And that tells you right there, something didn't sort of didn't go well, despite what you meant. Because remember, those kind of conversations, those are conducted on a secure line. Not everybody's going to just be listening. They are only, at least, I don't know how they do it in China, but at least for us in the United States, it's very structured. First of all, it has to be on a secure line, and second, there's only few elements within the U.S. government will be allowed to listen to the call, and usually there will be individuals from the National Security Council. There will be, of course, the National Security Agency, the head of the agency, and so there's only a few elements to do that. Interesting enough is that the Chinese readout about it was, as I said earlier, pointedly rejected the sanctions. Why? Because China in this case, argue that if the West, the US, using sanctions as a strategy to end the 3 weeks military operations of Russia in Ukraine, that's just not going to resolve the issue, because you are talking about, if you want to end the conflict, you're going to have to sit down and figure it out, hammer out the details as to what's led to the conflict in the first place. Because here's the thing, which we don't hear much about, and this is where the importance of you hearing another perspective, it's very, very important. We can't have just one narrative that is focused only on point A or a point B. What we need to have is to hear both narratives, A and B, and we'll reach our own conclusions. So here's China's arguments for this, is that about why the sanctions won't work. And you already start, as I said earlier, you're starting to see that in Europe, it's not working. Here in the United States, oil prices are going up, inflation is up. So we're already getting a conversation here in the United States. And China's argument, and I'm going to quote this one here because I want to use the exact wording that the Chinese government, it argued, and I quote here, sweeping and indiscriminate sanctions will only make the people suffer. It further escalates. If further escalates, the sanctions, meaning if they are go to another level, they could trigger serious crisis in the global economy. This is not about one country. Global economy and trade, finance, energy, food and industrial and supply chains. What does it all mean? It means that all the world economy is interconnected. And this is why countries going to start now to feel what it's like to for the sanctions on the energy regarding Russia. We're going to start to, we already, as I said, we're feeling that here in the US. And because here's the thing, if you are the entity, whomever that is, to issue the sanctions, you're already crippling, languishing world economy, because the world economy is not where it needs to be. And this will, of course, lead to irrevocable and losses, basically, for everyone. And that is the reason why China was issuing these statements, and the conversation of President Xi with Biden focused on this point. Because the thing is, the more complex the situation is, the greater the need to remain very sort of, what's the word I'm looking? Level-headed to figure out an issue, or to figure out a solution to the problem. And it is my belief that for the first time, I think the West has felt the weight now of the conflict with Russia. Of course, it's not going to disclose that, but it's the reality. As a geopolitical analyst, and as I said, I wrote the book about Russia and so forth. So I did my own homework. I did my research, and I kind of learned over the years what to look for and the trends to follow. This is really the first time, because during the Cold War, things were different. Why? Because you had individuals who were managing the complexities of international relations. Individuals who knew about global order, who knew about foreign policy. Today, we don't have that, at least. I can speak on our ends here. We got some amateurish foreign policy individuals calling themselves statesmen, calling themselves policy makers, individuals who have no clue about how global affairs operates, how you need to interact with other countries. This is not about just exposing force or intimidation. It is about understanding where you can draw the line when it comes down to the security and strategic interest of others, as much as you are pushing for your own interests and strategic interests. So the conflict now with Russia, sort of, the West is first time feeling this now, because you have low incomes, you have rising prices, you have unemployment, and all this plunging countries into some sort of a darkness, if I may use the term, economic, that is. So the price, and this will be like what an ordinary people, doesn't matter where, ordinary people are paying. In this case, it will be both in Europe and in the United States. And we are seeing some of that right here when it comes down to energy prices, with the inflation, of course. There are a lot of moving parts that we can't talk too much about here on this platform, as you may know the reasons why. So here's the thing. U.S. leaders and senior officials have stated that U.S. has no intentions to seek a new Cold War or change China's system. That the renewal of the U.S. alliances, like, for example, AUKUS, is not anti-China, and the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence. Well, hold on a second. What the officials are saying verbally is different from what was stated on the brief, on the press release, the statements coming out of the White House. And I'm going to read it. I'm going to read one particular aspect of it, if you allow me here. The readout, it says, the president reiterated that United States policy on Taiwan has not changed, and emphasized that the United States continues to oppose any unilateral changes to the status quo. It's self-explanatory. You're smart enough to read between the lines, and I do know that our viewers, you, smart enough to know, nothing's gonna fool you like that. So when you read something like this in writing, okay, but when you hear what the officials are saying, those are two opposite ends. Okay, it's almost like what you say versus what you do. And the argument continues, not the writing one, but the verbal one. It continues that that the United States is not looking for a conflict or confrontation with China. Well, wait a minute. Then if it's not the case, say, then what is the purpose of AUKUS? Australia willy-nilly wanted to form a partnership with UK and the US, because India kind of doesn't want any part of it. As a matter of fact, India now is reaching out to China. This is where the concern of the United States. And if you want my input about this call wasn't about just Russia's operation in Ukraine. This call was about the concern the United States has because now India is getting closer to China. Well, what does India and China have in common? Large markets. This is why the President of the United States didn't mention the word sanctions during his conversation with President Xi. So that's what I found very, very interestingly. Regrettably, however, these statements, as I said earlier, are just verbal. Those are words. Yes, there might be assurances there, but no, because that was the same thing We did say to the Soviet Union prior to its disintegration that we are not going to expand eastward. Those were just verbal assurances. Did we maintain that? No, we didn't. So what makes China think that the United States is going to hold its own of its end to the bargain? And this is why they didn't kind of bought the arguments from what the officials are saying. It's because of the issue of credibility. And guys, don't get me wrong here. I'm an American, and the idea of, because there are those I've been getting some comments saying, well, you don't like America, whatever. No, hold on a second. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with speaking the truth, something called the truth. It's about how fragmented our foreign policy is, because it is conducted by individuals who do not understand the depth of what global affairs are all about. We're just questioning the rationale, the pragmatism of what those policymakers are saying or are doing. That's all. It has nothing to do with not liking America, whatever. I'm an American. And it's my country, and it's because of my concern as to why I'm saying what I'm saying. And this is why China's looking at it that way, because their argument is that if those verbals are not put into deeds, they don't mean anything. Because they have seen, China in this case, have seen this movie before. And this is why you start to think in terms of, was this call of substance? No, it was not. It's fair to state that. It's because actions, this kind of actions, what the United States is doing, for example, why provoke China? Why provoke whatever? Why create this AUKUS thing? What for? Because those actions undermine US-China relations. It undermines that relationship, that the relations between the two countries, but also is disrupt and erode international peace and stability around the world. It's because this is not how a great power acts. This is now how a country that wields a global power, shall we say, behaves. And that's all we're saying here, is that credibility matters. But credibility comes with a responsibility. You can't be saying one thing and doing another. That's like, I look at it as a professor. I am to tell my students, please be on time, because being on time is very important. Well, if I can tell my students be on time and I am showing up late, what kind of example I'm setting for them? One of the students will say, well, Dr. O, you told us to be on time, but you're not. And it's fair and legitimate argument and observation. And I will have to say, you are absolutely right. I better do what I say and follow through. This is the argument. But here is what's important about this phone call and the timing of it, because it comes during a very, very interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? Period in the global order, as we know. It is moving from unipolarity to multipolarity. As I said last time, and I do remember saying this, you're not going to hear this term used in the West much. But I'm here to tell you, we're already shifting to that. But there is an important aspect also, that this year marks the 50th anniversary of the Shanghai community. Very important to put things in perspective. As I always say, guys, you always look at the trends around, and that gives you an idea. And there is this argument that there are those who've made that argument. I'm one of those that, because I'm in a process of putting information, research basically, writing a book about Russia, about China rather, and I have to sort of dig into the understanding of what this historical event means, what the trends means, and so forth, for me to sort of form a picture that will reflect the reality on the global geopolitical landscape. So there is that argument that China, in the spirit of seeking a common ground, while at the same time trying to sort of preserve and reserve the differences. What do I mean by this? Is the idea of understanding that, and this is why I'm leaning towards more, that the phone call from the White House to China was meant to seek assistance with the Russia issue. It wasn't about an issue and warning. It's about seeking assistance. Because here's the thing, the differences that exist, you could look at it in terms of, can you imagine if China, and this is just put on this hypothetical consideration, just imagine China mediating the conflict in Ukraine right now. How do you think that's going to make the United States look? How do you think Europeans going to be feeling about that? Because China already took an initiative regarding the Arab-Israeli conflict. And what was the reaction from around the world? A lot of countries welcomed that. Why? Because of the neutrality, because of the credibility. Because if you don't have credibility, you can't. You can't achieve anything. And this is what that idea of the arguments that China has been made in that, how about replacing confrontation with cooperation? How about making the world a peaceful place and prosperous for everybody, not just one ethnic, one race, one country, whatever. So those are just legitimate questions, concerns, statements that you put forth. And looking ahead, and this is my personal opinion, looking ahead at the US-China relations, it becomes clear to me that, who's going to need to re-engage, which most likely the United States needs to re-engage in having sort of the same approach and the conviction that once had back some about 60 years ago or so, during the 1970s. You all know what happened in the 1970s. When the former President Nixon met with Chairman Mao. And by the way, Nixon was about to take a shower at that moment when Henry Kissinger barged into his room, knocking on the door. He said, Chairman Mao wants to meet. And that opened up the relationship between the United States and China. Because that's what helped. And it took a journey of its own. So, as geopolitical analyst, I will argue that both US and China must replace the competitive, collaborative, adversarial divisions that exist. There are many ways they can do that, especially the United States can move towards that direction. And I will think of only 3 key points. One of them is mutual respect. Second one is peaceful coexistence. And the third one, it will be a win-win situation for everybody. Wouldn't that make more sense? Because if we are to approach it with this attitude of, excuse me, we're going to go and we're going to issue these terms of, we're going to sanction you if you assist Russia, whatever. Well, wait a minute. China or any other country is a sovereign state. They can help whomever they want. Who are we to dictate? Once again, because the global order has changed. We moved from unipolarity to multipolar system. And this is why, and I'll say it again, in my opinion, the phone call was of no substance. Will I go as far as saying it was just a show? I don't know. I can't reach that conclusion. Will I go as far as saying it was desperation? Because, as I always say, and I am sure you guys remember me when I said that, you remember when I said this before, in international relations, context matters. So if you are to put, and just imagine this with me, if you are to put United States phone call last week to Saudi Arabia, in which Saudi Arabia didn't even pick up the phone, put it within the context of international relations, you get the conclusion, right? You get the point. That is exactly what I'm saying. So it's the understanding that, and that's why, once again, I am leaning more towards the objective of the phone call was to seek assistance and help from China with the Russia issue. Because there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes regarding this ongoing conflicts in Ukraine. And I remember I did a video on the other platform, without mentioning it here, in which I detailed the objective of the Ukrainian president speech, which, by the way, was written for him. There is no way. He's a comedian, so I have nothing against the guy, but I'm being objective. You don't go from comedian to a head of state and assume you will understand how global dynamics work. That thing doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of understanding. It takes years of research. It takes years of learning and grasp of the true issues that can move countries one direction or another. Because geopolitics is not a straight line. Global order is not a straight line. And this is exactly what we are witnessing. And this is why I said earlier, the West didn't expect, because the West is the first time now that dealing with Russia in a different level altogether. Because we didn't have those issues during the height of the Cold War. Why? Because at that time, there were individuals from both ends managing that balance of power, managing the chaos, managing the orders, global order, that is. Things have changed now. And as I said earlier, and again, I am not putting down anybody here. I'm just speaking the truth from my heart. No more, no less. I don't advocate for anybody. I don't advance any agenda whatsoever, and I will not allow it. And that's it. I feel it's my responsibility as a citizen to express the truth so people can have an understanding. And the truth is, we got amateurs when it comes down to foreign policy. It becomes like the issue of loyalty. If you are loyal to me, I'll promote you to whatever, even though you are not qualified for that. What happened to integrity? What happened to qualifications? That is where the issue is. And again, the whole purpose of it is to avoid a major conflict that can drown the entire world. What I can tell you guys is just, this is no small matter. And yet there are those who are pushing from behind the scenes for this chaos to go even further. And that's what we talked about this morning on our live stream. I don't know if you got a chance to see it on the other platform. Shame on those policymakers. I don't know how they can live with themselves. I just don't. And I'm not judging them. They have to live with that. They have to live with this conscience. If I am to sit here and tell you lies, how will I confront myself? How can I look at the mirror or look at you and said, oh, I'm sharing the knowledge with you when I'm lying to you? I don't know how one can live with him or herself knowingly that he or she is doing that. And that's why I don't get it. When you're speaking the truth, all of a sudden you're being labeled. What happened? What happened? You know, in a country like ours, where the ideals of democracy, we used to talk about them. You know, well, how come we are saying one thing and doing another? Yeah, it's no good. So here's the thing. I want to conclude this, and I'm going to leave you with 2 questions just for you to contemplate. My conclusion is this. The global order we see today that has been managed for decades by the United States, all right? But the cracks in the structure of the global order are increasing or have been increasing, expanding, and even becoming more visible. Actually, American foreign policy is in shambles. Let's just say it the way it is. Let's not sugarcoat it. Even though some in Washington and some in Brussels establishment pretend otherwise. Similarly, NATO, I would say it's confused. And Europe is more divided than ever. So that is the whole reason for why I believe the phone call today was meant in a subtle way as a message asking China for assistance. Could I be wrong? Yes, possibly. But at least it's my own mistakes. But I stand by my thinking, knowing what I know. This is what I'm leaning towards, is that the purpose of the call was indirectly asking Beijing to mediate a ceasefire in Ukraine. Because here's the thing, have you seen any Western soldiers in Ukraine? It became evident. So, all right, let me ask you the 2 questions, and I'm going to end it or close in here, guys. So here's the first question. And those questions, by the way, guys, it's just to contemplate, to think about. It's because we don't hear much about certain things. What I'm trying to do with those questions, I'm really just for me to learn as well. And don't think I'm just learning from you as well, guys. And I truly appreciate your comments, and I read the stuff and I learn from them. So thanks to all of you. And thank you for your civil discourse. Because here is the thing, to whomever, if you have nothing to say, to contribute, please don't put any comments. You know, you're free to say whatever, but at the same time, be respectful to that audience that are putting their thinking into action. That's the whole purpose of it. So here's the first question. In your opinion, should China not answer Biden's phone call like Saudi Arabia did? In other words, they won't pick up the phone. And second question is, do you believe United States-China policy will return to the right track that was once guided by reason and pragmatism? I repeat the first question. Should China not answer Biden's phone call like Saudi Arabia did? And the second question is, do you believe United States-China policy will ever return to the right track that was once guided by reason and pragmatism? So those are just some questions to ponder. So I want to say thank you all for your support, guys. For you, if this is your first time watching this channel, please subscribe, because we want to still increase the numbers of subscribers. So please help us out with that. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time. I'll keep my eyes open on the topics or issues that I feel you will need to have a different perspective on, so you can form your own ideas. Okay? As always, guys, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.